question that what is the exact status of Kashmir at international level?
It's a disputed territory. There are 20 million people living in this territory, and the size of the territory is about 220,000 square kilometers. It has 5 regions, and it is on the agenda of the United Nations Security Council. The future of the territory has to be decided by its own people through a referendum, and that has not been done up to this day because of Indian occupation of the territory and India's non-cooperation with the international community in holding a referendum. They have violated international law and the UN Security Council resolutions, the 4th Geneva Convention, and many other laws and conventions and treaties. But I would not say that they have violated their internal law, the domestic law. These domestic provisions, constitutional provisions, were in fact fake and fictitious. They had made false promises to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Particularly one article, Article 370, was a symbolic or cosmetic link between India and the people of Jammu and Kashmir. They had assured them over the decades that their separate identity would be recognized. By withdrawing this, they have destroyed that myth themselves. Everybody knew that this article was an empty shell. The other article, which is Article 35A, belongs to the people of Jammu and Kashmir, to their rights. Their right to inherit property, their right for permanent residence, employment and education. All these rights India is trying to take back. In addition, it has decided to move Indian citizens into the occupied territory and create settlements there along the lines of the Israeli settlements in Palestine. So this also is a crime against humanity, and it's a war crime because according to international law, the 4th Geneva Convention and Additional Protocol 1 and ICC statute and many Security Council resolutions, when there is a territory which is disputed or which is occupied, you can't transfer populations illegally there. You can't bring in fresh people or you can't deport people to change the demographic structure of the state. This is what India is doing. So it is violating international law, and the changes that it has made in its domestic law are in contravention of the international law and the United Nations Security Council resolutions.
Then what is the exact aim of the Indian government? Why they are doing this? Just about the territory or Muslim people?
It is about territory basically, because over the past 72 years, they tried to subjugate the people of Jammu and Kashmir by occupying their territory, by brutalizing them, by violating their human rights, by subjecting them to torture and death and disappearances, but they haven't succeeded. And now, in the recent phase, in fact, in the past several years, the Kashmiri movement for freedom and self-determination has become very strong. There were very strong voices and massive protests in the occupied territory demanding liberty and freedom. And they were afraid that the international community would support them, because recently President Donald Trump had also talked about mediation on the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. Out of fear, they have expedited these steps which they were intending to take for the past several years. So they do not succeed. They haven't succeeded in winning hearts and minds of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. They thought that that state, the territorial part of that state and the geography of that state, the territory, they would lose because of the opposition of the Kashmiri people. So that's why they have taken these steps.
Is there any way to reach those people who live?
Well, we have been able to establish contacts with some of the people, but as you have mentioned, there's communications blockade there, and India is committing crimes there, and it wants to hide those crimes from the rest of the world. So it is not easy to get information, but the information that is public is that they had 700,000 troops until recently, but now they have added another 180,000 troops to the existing strength. So we know that they have gone there with the intention of killing people. They have gone there with the intention of intensifying their cordon and search operations, in which they target youths, they arrest these political activists, put them in jails and these torture cells, and then torture them to death. So we know that a Holocaust is unfolding in the occupied territory right now.
There are some concerns that the Indian army is preparing an assault with their hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Do you think that there is a possibility of negotiations?
Well, Pakistan is ready. The people of Jammu and Kashmir always have shown their preference for negotiations and for diplomacy. But India rejects all such overtures or offers from the international community and from Pakistan and the Kashmiris. Their policy is of non-engagement, no negotiations, no talks, no recognition of the dispute. So it is very difficult for us to engage India. That's why we need the assistance and help of the international community and friends like Turkey to step forward and persuade India to explore some diplomatic and political space for the resolution of the dispute and for diffusing tensions that are emerging. But let me tell you that the message that we want to give to the international community, a clear message, is that India cannot forcibly occupy our land and populate it with its own citizens. It has no right to do that. And it cannot be allowed to brutalize our people and expect that the people would not resist under these conditions.
Is there a possibility that establishing an axis between Pakistan and China against India? What's China's position in this situation?
Pakistan and China are close allies, they've been friends. They have been pursuing a strategic cooperative relationship, but it doesn't target a third country like India. It is the relationship between Pakistan and China is aimed at peace and amity and cooperation and connectivity within the region. They do not want confrontation. They do not want war. If there is war, confrontation, that would be bad and detrimental for individual countries and also for the region as a whole. So, but these steps that India has taken in the recent past in regard to Kashmir, they militate against the core interests of China and Pakistan both, because this territory of Kashmir belongs to Pakistan, subject of course to the exercise of the free will by the Kashmiris in determining their own future. Many countries have supported our stance, China, Turkey, Malaysia, many others, Islamic countries, but some countries regrettably have remained tight-lipped, or some have even given statements that could be interpreted as pro-India statements. They have done so because of their strategic and economic interests linked to India. But we think that the world should take a more just stance in regard to Kashmir, because the people of Jammu and Kashmir are being victimized. They are being subjected to this militaristic terrorism, state terrorism being exercised by India. So, but let me tell you that there is one reality. Citizens all over the world, whether they are in Turkey or in Pakistan or in the Islamic world or even in the Western world, they are outraged and shocked by India's irresponsible actions, because you know this region is violent and this has been a turbulent part of the world, and it is the relations between Pakistan and India are strained mainly because of India's provocations and its aggression against Pakistan. Any tension on Kashmir can push the entire region to war and to a nuclear confrontation, which would be disaster for the region and for the rest of the world.
Knowing what they could achieve in Gaza and Palestine so far, what are your expectations from the international community?
Palestine has been under occupation since 1948, and Kashmir has been under occupation of India since 1947. So there is a parallel between the situations in Palestine and Kashmir. Recently, some steps were taken by the United States which legalized or tended to legalize Israel's illegitimate occupation of the territory or illegal settlements. They also recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and they in fact try to legalize Israel's occupation of Golan Heights. So yes, we face this challenge. We do not expect much from some of these states, although President Trump had offered to mediate on the issue of Jammu and Kashmir, but he did not follow up on his announcements. Otherwise, India would not have taken these steps. They failed to engage India in a diplomatic endeavor. Now, that's not all. India is learning from Israel. They have close ties, and India is trying to replicate Israeli practices in Kashmir by changing the demography of the state, by settling people from India inside Kashmir, and by fresh delimitation of constituents to reduce Muslim majority into a minority. This is what they're trying to do. But as Israel has not succeeded in the Gaza Strip or in the West Bank, I believe very strongly that India would also not succeed. It would not be able to integrate the territory of Jammu and Kashmir or the people of Jammu and Kashmir to the Indian Federation, because they are not a natural part of the Indian state. The state has remained under Indian occupation for the past 72 years, and despite all sorts of tactics that India has used, they treat themselves as aliens, and they are treated as aliens in the Indian state.
As we all know, there is a strong relation between Pakistan and Turkey. What are your exact expectations from Turkey, government, media, people, civil society?
First, I want to thank President Erdogan for his strong statement in support of the people of Jammu and Kashmir when recently the Prime Minister of Pakistan spoke to him. And the Foreign Ministry also issued a strongly worded statement expressing concern over the situation. Turkey has also emphasized dialogue between India and Pakistan and dialogue through multilateral forums to resolve this issue. Recently, I was in Turkey and I met representatives and leaders of civil society and the media and think tanks. And they were all unanimous that the people of Jammu and Kashmir should be given justice, and there should be a collective effort at the international level and through cooperation between Turkey and Pakistan to put an end to the repression in Jammu and Kashmir, which is becoming worse every day, and to find a just and lasting solution for the people of Jammu and Kashmir in accordance with their own wishes and in accordance with the UN Security Council resolutions. What do we expect? I've spoken to many channels today in Turkey, and I've said that Turkey is a strong country. It's a strong and powerful ally of Pakistan. We respect the people and state of Turkey, and we have these, in Kashmir, we have these feelings and sentiments of love and affection for the people of Turkey. And we have these expectations that the people of Turkey would speak up for us internally in Turkey, in the region, and in international forums for the protection of the rights of the Kashmiris, which are being destroyed right now. So my appeal to all segments of society here is that we, the people of Jammu and Kashmir, are passing through the darkest hour in our history. I mean, there were other difficult periods in our history when India and Pakistan went to war on Kashmir. But this is probably by far the darkest hour in our history when India has changed its occupation into colonization. And it is the international community's responsibility to decolonize that territory. At this hour, we need solidarity and support of the people of Turkey. And I'm sure that they would be forthcoming. And we would remain grateful to you and to the entire population of Turkey and to the state of Turkey. And as I said, that externally, you have a network of your friends and supporters and allies in the international community, in the world parliaments. You have a voice in the United Nations. Please use it for the protection of the rights of the Kashmiris. And to protect them, in fact, they are being killed right now. The Kashmiri leaders, genuine Kashmiri leaders, true representatives, who are in prison there in Kashmir, just before the Indian steps, they warned the entire international community that there would be a genocide in Kashmir. And it is the world's responsibility, and brothers and sisters in Turkey, it is their responsibility as well to avert this kind of holocaust, this kind of genocide.